the Getting Into Good Trouble podcast, where we make it our mission to challenge, question, and inspire you to do the same. I'm the host for today, John Payne, here with my co-hosts,
Vedika,
Sue John,
and Hudson.
In today's episode, we'll explore Mexico's recent controversial judicial reform. These developments could reshape the nation's government, affect its citizens, and define its future. Join us as we break down key issues behind the reform and consider their potential impact on Mexico and the world. Plus, stick around for our conversation with special guest Dr. K, whose expertise in government relations and humanities can provide some professional insight into the change in Mexico, and an analysis of our conversation with Lila Abed, the director of Mexico Institute. Her expertise in Mexico's political and social landscape will provide valuable insight into these topics. So please, join us as we navigate the pulse of Mexico's politics on the Getting Into Good Trouble podcast, where we are committed to providing you with accurate and reliable information. So, Vedika, this sounds like a big deal. Could you kind of give us some background on it?
So every country aims to flesh out corruption and create a fair system for all. But is that what's actually happening here? See, the Mexican judicial reform is an 8-year plan created by former President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. A complete judicial reform puts the power in the hands of the citizens, allowing each person to have a say in who judges each court, with judges being elected by popular vote. The recently elected Mexican President, Claudia Sheinbaum, is continuing this plan. While this may seem like a step towards a better nation, many citizens oppose the idea. Many see the reform as a way that corruption will further seep into the system by allowing the wrong people to be voted into power. People have shared their worries about this reform, even breaching the Senate meeting where the order was passed. While this reform appears to be a step towards restoring the integrity in Mexico's government system, examining the people involved reveals just how complicated the path forward might be. People are divided and don't know what to believe. So, let's get our facts straight.
So why could a popular vote system be so bad? Sounds like the people have the power. Isn't that good?
Yeah, while the reform grants the public more authority in the judicial selection process, many are concerned about the risks that come with it. Approximately 6,730 judicial positions across Mexico.
Hold up. 6,730 judicial positions? Wouldn't that be impossible to keep track of? How would the people know whether someone's qualified when they're looking for the position or not?
Well, that's exactly the issue that Lila Abed was talking about. The large number of available positions can make it easy to overlook qualified candidates. This raises concerns that unfit or inexperienced individuals might end up securing influential roles in the judiciary. This lack of control could lead to inefficiency, corruption, or biased rulings, ultimately weakening the judicial system's integrity. It shouldn't be so difficult for the people to be informed that it should be left up to the government.
So, should the old method be brought back?
Well, that's why there's such a dispute. The answer isn't clear. The citizens of Mexico didn't feel like their voices were being heard, and they felt as though the system was long overdue for a change. Feeling like you don't get a say in topics can be a powerful reason to look for a change.
So what are some of the effects that could stem from this?
So with the new judicial system, there is now less trust in the legal process. Many businesses and the economy have taken a hit. You can also see how many federal judges there are going on strike, and many citizens are protesting even more than before. Many worry that the judicial branch will no longer be a check on the other branches. The conflict over the matter alone is causing worry, fear, and anger in Mexico. The uncertainty among the citizens further contributes to the economic issue and hurts international imports and exports.
Hudson, could you kind of tell us a bit about what Lila talked about during our interview?
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the key points and takeaways from our interview was that the citizens, for the most part, are in favor of the reform. However, they're not super informed or knowledgeable about what the reform actually means. They just heard kind of the promise of a more transparent and democratic government and really seized it with both hands. And like she said, the average working citizen doesn't really, understand what some of the implications could be, whether that would be good or bad. And so they don't really realize how big of a change it is and how this could really impact everything from local government all the way up to the major courts. So because of this, a lot of the voting will be difficult to keep track of, and it will be hard for especially your everyday working citizen that has a regular job to keep track of all of the different candidates that are running. There might be 40 something, 50 something on your ballot. Mexican leaders and the voting organizations are also concerned about ballot wait times and how that could impact the amount of people that vote, because it could take a very long time. Obviously, if you have to check 50 boxes and remember and recall your information back to head, especially if you need to do that for 50 something candidates. And Mexico doesn't really have a plan currently if the reform is deemed unsuccessful, which basically means that if it's a huge failure, that they would have to somehow engineer it into something that worked a little bit better, but they could never really fully go back, at least not right now.
Now that we've covered the facts, we can see that the future ahead is unclear. Judicial reforms don't just change the laws, they change the way citizens interact with their government. We are now going to look at necessary steps Mexico needs to take for successful judicial reform. To help us explore that connection, we have Dr. K, a humanities teacher with a deep interest in government relations.
Hello, Dr. K. Thank you so much for being on our podcast today.
My pleasure.
We just had a few questions for you because we know you're an expert on all things government and politics. And we thought you would be a great person to interview about the current unrest in Mexico regarding the judicial reform. So do you know of any examples of countries or other civilizations or governments who have undergone a similar change?
In terms of comparisons I can think of FDR's presidency, where the Supreme Court issue came to the forefront, where he wanted to flood, some might say flood, the Supreme Court with more judges so he can push through his reforms. And that to this day has been a very contentious issue. It comes and goes, as you can see. Like, usually the losers of elections are the ones who tend to complain most and want change, but when they're in power, they like it as it is. So I think there's dangers there, depending on the individual's true intentions, because manipulating the judicial system can open Pandora's box, and the wrong person can take advantage of those situations to pretty much crush the citizenry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what do you think some key similarities between this flooding of the court and kind of, the judicial reform that's being undergone right now in Mexico?
So they're voting their judges in versus them being appointed, like it is in the U.S. and many other countries. I think that it's emblematic of one of the big kind of polarizing topics about democracy, like power to the people, but how much power should be given? Are they educated enough to make the right decisions? Are they easily manipulated into making decisions politicians want to make? Are they easily corrupted, in other words? So there's that give and take where, like, many thinkers, at least from the 19th century, were reluctant, and 18, 19th century, where they're reluctant to kind of hand over the keys to the people, because they're fickle. They're very quick to cede their rights for people who offer great solutions. Alexis de Tocqueville made that comment about the American system. The American system. He wrote a huge book about, like, the ups and downs of the American political system. So I think there's benefits, but everything can be perfect. There has to be a give and take where can you deliver the best possible situation in the confines of the actual context. So, like, giving power to the people, but then are they ready to take that power and do the right thing?
Yeah, it's like finding a balance between like what the citizens should be able to do in the government and what needs to be entrusted to the people that were voted in, basically.
Yes, and I think like if we were to like the true democracy, which has never been seen since the time of Athens, entails like full participation. Like you can't live far from the nerve center or else like democracy doesn't work. Like you have to be participating and voting on every single thing, from like sidewalk, no, there weren't sidewalks, but like stuff like that, the trivial,
all the little
boring things. And so that's a heavy lift for people who are trying to put food on the table, put their kids through school and get home exhausted. If they're a construction worker or something, it's hard to, sometimes the news is quite demoralizing because it tends to feed off of emotion. So like some people just are turned off by informing themselves because it's not something you want to consume after a long day of work.
Thank you, Dr. K. Let's review some key points. A true democracy requires full participation. If all of the people aren't involved, the system isn't truly fair. Citizens must think for themselves. If everyone just listened to what the government or majority says, it would allow the people in power to take advantage of citizens. And citizens can be quick to give up their freedom for solutions during rough times. If the reform does not pull through, then the citizens may take any solution they can. This could bring the wrong people into power.
Overall, the balance between citizens and the government is delicate. If people educate themselves before voting, they will increase the likelihood of a successful judicial reform. However, if the government strays from its primary goal, serving the people, it risks making the system even worse. Ultimately, a lasting reform depends on both an informed electorate and a government committed to justice, ensuring that changes truly benefit society rather than creating new problems.
And that's a wrap on our episode. We hope this helped you get a better insight on understanding of Mexico's recent presidential election and ongoing judicial reform. Thanks to our special guests, Leila Abed and Dr. K, for sharing their expertise on the matter and helping us dig deeper into these critical issues. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, keep challenging, keep questioning, and keep getting into good trouble.